Shalom, Erev Tov. Thank you. And firstly, apologies for the voice. Second apology, which should be the first apology for the delay. But for good reason, it seems that my daughter-in-law is in labor. So Baruch Hashem just had to arrange for someone to take care of my grandson. So please forgive me for this last-minute delay as we get started, especially on the eve of Rosh Chodesh Adar. This is the time to already explore Megillat Esther. And a few people emailed me, Shani, is this the same series as last year? And the answer is, of course not, because there is so much to explore in Megillat Esther that numerous years will not suffice. But for those who do remember the last lecture of last year's series, we discussed how Megillat Esther contains within it numerous allusions to almost every story in Tanakh. And this should not be surprising, considering that chronologically, Megillat Esther is in fact the latest, again more or less overlapping with the same time period as Daniel, Divrei Hayamim, Ezra, Nehemiah, Chagai, Zachariah, Malachi. These are amongst the last of the Sfarim in Tanakh, and therefore the authors of Megillat Esther, for all intents and purposes, basically have before them almost all of the works of Tanakh, not only for them to refer back to, but certainly with which to create allusions. And therefore, together, we're going to explore over the next few weeks a certain disguise in Megillat Esther. In other words, messages that don't necessarily immediately meet the eye, but as we unmask Esther, particularly from a textual literary perspective, and certainly when it comes to appreciating the development of the holiday, we're going to try to understand not only what some of the subtle messages are, but perhaps maybe what the most important messages are that sometimes we overlook. So without further ado, together we're going to explore the allusions as we unmask the story of Megillat Esther. Allusions, as we said, are going to be rampant in Megillat Esther, and the question is always, why would an author draw various allusions? What is his motive? What is his agenda? The various approaches that have been espoused by many commentaries, certainly modern-day scholarship, Noble, Jonathan Grossman, Professor Yitzchak Berger, all of them maintain that there are basically three different goals in creating allusions. The first one is to contribute meaning, but also to provide context for a central ideological objective. In other words, it's not merely to play on words, and not only for them to appreciate perhaps even the repetition of history, but rather to highlight a certain ideological objective. So if we think of a theme, for example, of Sefer Breshit, let's imagine even filial motifs that we find throughout the book, then a work that is going to be built off of the work of Genesis is clearly trying to highlight some of those ideas as part of the ideology of the book itself. The second agenda, or the second reason for employing and incorporating allusions, is to allude to a wide array of text. An author might therefore not only save time and space, but also depth of character by drawing parallels to various other characters. So, for example, if we think of some of the stars in our stories of Jewish history, certainly amongst those that are canonized, if there are going to be allusions, for example, to Avraham Avinu, we already know that this is the author's way of telling us, instead of merely referring to a character who is going to be monotheistic, who is going to be a revolutionary, who is going to establish a dynasty of philosophy, and someone who is also going to be involved in militant expeditions, by merely drawing associations, allusions to the character of Abraham, we already have a greater sense of the depth of the character that he's highlighting before us right now. And the last of the reasons, or really one of the goals of allusions, is in fact for us, the readers, to appreciate many of the parallels, even when they're distributed erratically throughout the narrative. So as you see, you have a lot of source material before you, because there are going to be various, I would even argue, multiple, numerous allusions throughout, designed not only for us to appreciate the comparisons, but very often they're also going to be employed in order for us to appreciate the contrasts. And this is what Professor Jonathan Grossman likes to call dynamic allusions. In other words, the author not only drawing parallels with one character, but sometimes even two characters, and sometimes even to show us how they serve not only as parallel characters, but ironically sometimes as antithetical characters. For example, in the stories of Esther and Mordechai, we find that there are various parallels with none other than Aharon and Moshe, keeping in mind that they even have the same vowels and consonants of the Aleph and the Mem. And the two are basically partners in a process of redemption. So of course there are going to be parallels between Mordechai, Esther, Moshe and Aaron, but beyond that, sometimes Mordechai is going to resemble more Moshe, and sometimes actually more Aharon. So too with regard to Esther. And therefore, as we begin now, the topic of the evening, we're going to take a look particularly at how Esther and Mordechai are going to be writing the Sefer, comparing themselves not only to Aaron and Moshe, not only perhaps to some of what I'm sure you're familiar with, more of the famous characters of Yosef HaTzadik, and to Daniel, two very successful members of the Jewish community who succeed in the diaspora. But they're also going to draw parallels with themselves and people like David HaMelech. But perhaps even more than heroes like David, it makes even more sense to say that Esther and Mordechai, proud members of the dynasty, as we'll see, of Beit Shaul, are really going to teach us messages of the Shaul dynasty. They're going to highlight messages as they see themselves from Shevet Binyamin. Now, in order to really appreciate their goals, one has to always put a sefer back, not only in its textual context in the canon, but also in its historical context. Albeit, Chazal explain a minimalistic view of Jewish history, teaching us that the story of Megillat Esther happens sometime between 538 BCE, during the time of the proclamation of Cyrus, who allows for the Jews, together with all those who were exiled by the Babylonians from 605 till about 670 BCE, to now return to their countries and rebuild their temples. And then afterwards comes Achashverosh, explains Rabbi Yosef Bar Chalafta in Seder Olam, a Mishnaic work of the first century. Only then comes Daryavesh. So according to the classical, what we'll call majority view of Chazal, there are only 4 Persian kings, because that's all we find in Tanakh. And then the story of Esther occurs after Jews are allowed to return to the land of Israel, but before there's actually permission of Darius to rebuild the Beit HaMikdash in Yerushalayim, as opposed to the minority view of Chazal, which is in fact the majority of Persian historians, namely that there are various kings, many more than 4, closer to 14 kings. This attributes to what is famously known as the 160 missing years in Jewish history. During this time period, then, it seems as if after Koresh, we have a very weak king named Cambyses. His son Darius, or basically the general who takes over, who succeeds the Persian throne, allows for the rebuilding of the Beit HaMikdash. Now let's just review for a moment that during the time of Koresh, we know that Koresh allowed for all the Yehudim, the members of Yehuda, to return to Yerushalayim. And if you remember, only a drop in the bucket return. 42,360 is recorded in Sefer Ezra. So we have a minority of Judeans living amongst Samaritans, living amongst the tribes of the north, generally known as Bnei Ephraim. And then we have the tribe of Binyamin, who, albeit they are going to return as well, because those members of Binyamin who lived in Jerusalem were exiled together with the Judeans, and now they find themselves back in Jerusalem, back in Judea. However, some of the more northern Benjamites are actually part of this Samaritan kingdom, and there's tremendous tension between them. And we find that the Yehudim are trying to establish autonomy during the time period of Darius. And finally, in the second year of Darius, as he wins and quells various rebellions, establishes pachatim, he establishes satraps in the area of the Persian monarchy, and appoints Zerubbabel ben Shaltiel, appoints the heir not of the Samaritan throne, not of Bnei Ephraim, but rather of Yehudah as the king, or the pachat, the satrap, the governor over the area of Yehudah. And therefore, it's imperative for us to appreciate that in the meantime, there are many other Jews, literally Yehudim, who have not yet returned to the land of Israel, albeit, according to this, Achashverosh lives after Daryavesh. Namely, there's already a second temple built, and Jews, can you imagine this? Even though there's pseudo-autonomy in the country, even though there's a temple rebuilt, are still living in Chutz La'aretz. And in fact, not only are Yehudim in Chutz La'aretz, but Mordechai and Esther are in Chutz La'aretz. We have members of the tribe of Binyamin living outside of the borders of Eretz Yisrael as well. With this now, we take a look and appreciate various parallels now between Esther and, one can say, her ancestor, her forefather, Shaul HaMelech. And in order to better appreciate this, we're going to look at the parallels within the context of the books of Esther and that of Shmuel as well, beginning with the establishment of their monarchies, trying to understand, again, notable parallels between these books, concentrating on the reputation, as you see, of Benjamite leadership. Certainly during this time, what do you think the Judeans think of the Benjamites living in Chutz La'aretz? Well, number one, they're very upset with the Judeans who have stayed in Chutz La'aretz, the members of their own tribe. All the more so, Binyamin, to the people of Yehudah. Who are the people of Binyamin? It's true, Yerushalayim is really the border city of Binyamin with Yehudah. It really is in the province and Nachala of Binyamin. Nonetheless, the people of Yehudah see Binyamin as the rejected tribe, as the tribe of Shaul HaMelech. And therefore, they're even more disappointed when people from Benjamin's tribe don't return to join Yehudah, especially in their tensions with the northern tribes. So as we take a look at this, we find that, of course, there are going to be numerous parallels between Mordechai and Shaul. After all, one being, to a certain degree, an heir to the other. But what we're going to see is even more than Mordechai and Esther, the respective authors of Megillat Esther, drawing parallels between Mordechai and Shaul. They're actually going to focus even more on Esther and Shaul. So let's begin with the rise of Shaul and the rise of Esther to monarchy. And this perhaps is the most basic analogy, because these are really our only two king, queen, respectively, from the tribe of Binyamin that actually serve as monarchs within the broader public. We begin with Shaul's selection for monarchy, but let's already look, opening up Megillat Esther to Perek Aleph Pasuk Yutet, and there we see that after Vashti, for whatever reason, adamantly refusing the king's request for her to appear before him so that he can demonstrate her beauty before the other nations, if you recall, one of the closer advisors to the kings, Memuchan, recommends that Achashverosh finds a ru'uta hatova mimena. It's not enough to banish Vashti to the harem. Rather, he should look for re'uta hatova mimena. There is only one other phrase that is similar to this in Tanakh, and I'm waiting to see emphatic head shaking. Because what is this phrase? Of course, it reminds anyone who's somewhat familiar with Sefer Shmuel, the very famous chapter following what we'll explore in greater depth, the almost sin, the transgression, the iniquity of Shaul, as he doesn't shomea, as he doesn't listen to the edict of Shmuel and to God to completely eradicate Amalek and literally place everyone, including the animals, in a state of cherem, namely not to enjoy any of the spoils of war, but to kill everyone, men, women, children, flock, kill them all off. What happens as a result? Shmuel has to explain to Shaul, that's it. Kara Hashem et mamlechut Yisrael me'alecha. God is from here on in tearing the malchut from you. Unitana l'reacha hatov mimeka. And he will give it, as we see, to your neighbor who is better than thou. And we all know already in the subsequent chapter, who is that neighbor going to be who is better and more qualified than Shaul? None other than David HaMelech. David is the Re'ah who takes over, who literally is now going to assume the position of monarch, of the king of Israel, not only from Shaul, but is now going to establish his own dynasty that remarkably becomes a dynasty for eschatological times as well, an eternal dynasty that potentially Shaul could have earned, but he lost it. All of a sudden, we open up Megillat Esther, and we see that it begins with an immediate allusion to the story of David, but here's the irony. Who is now going to be the Re'ah, who will assume the monarchy in place of the iniquitous previous monarch? Now, it's not David. As a matter of fact, it isn't even a male. It's actually a female. And it's not someone from the Davidic line. It's not even someone from the tribe of Yehudah. Irony of irony. Who is it? It is Esther from the tribe of Binyamin, giving us a sense that the authors are telling us, don't worry, what's going on within the story? It's true that David is going to inherit the monarchy from Shaul, but don't worry, Esther will reclaim it. Esther will get it back. But what are we, the readers, supposed to think? Is there a competition that is taking place here? Is there some type of, perhaps, deep-rooted animosity between the people of Binyamin and Yehudah? Well, let's continue in order to divulge some of the messages behind these allusions. We continue then with Esther Perek Bet. Ish Yehudi haya b'Shushan habira. That's interesting. Mordechai, as we see, is Ben Yair, Ben Shim'i, Ben Kish, Ish Yemini. He is clearly from the tribe of, in which case, how should he be qualified at the beginning of the verse? He shouldn't be called an Ish Yehudi. He should be called an Ish Yemini. And yet, the authors are telling you, we don't have any aspersions. We don't have any negative feelings towards the people of Yehudah. As a matter of fact, the contrary. How do we see ourselves? We see ourselves as Yehudim. Esther is not reclaiming the malchut from David. What is she doing instead? She is redeeming Shaul's lost monarchy. And basically saying, we can live up to the standards of Yehudah. Don't worry, just wait and see. We can do this well. I recognize both the wonderful qualities of my ancestor Shaul and simultaneously the negative ones. So let's begin with the positive ones. Sure enough, not only is Mordechai described as the Ish Yemini, Asher Hoglam Yerushalayim. We're the ones from Shevet Binyamin who feel a greater relationship with Yerushalayim. We're the ones who, of course, recognize that we're in a state of exile. We're not just outside of Eretz Yisrael. We find ourselves outside of Yerushalayim. So don't worry. All of you Yehudim in Yerushalayim, we're from Binyamin. We're from Yerushalayim. We understand your feelings. Don't see us as an antagonistic population. Don't see us as your brethren in Chutz La'aretz who are merely there to earn better salaries than you. We're there to help you out. We're there because we really feel the same sentiments as you. As a matter of fact, wait and hear our story. And sure enough, how is Esther going to be introduced in the next pasuk? Mordechai is the Omen et Hadassah. He brings up Hadassah. He, Esther, bat Dodo. He raises his cousin. Now, there are various ways in Tanakh that we could have heard that Esther is Mordechai's cousin. Bat Dodo connotes that how is she related to him? Through the paternal side of the family, clarifying that she too then is certainly from Sheva Binyamin. And notice that at this stage of the Megillah, she is not yet married, in which case she is a Betula, she is also a Benjamite. Ki ein la ava'im, v'hana'ara, yefat toar, v'tovat mareh. The authors are clearly telling us, even though the Midrashim see these terms in various contexts, positive, negative, the authors are saying, we have a lot of Benjamite blood. Not only that, we have a lot of B'nai Rachel blood. We are descendants of gorgeous Rachel Imenu, described in these terms. But not only that, they're very proud to draw the allusion to whom? To their ancestor Shaul. Because what do we know about Shaul? Upon Shaul's rise to monarchy, his being selected as monarch, we find a similar description. V'hi ish mi ben Yamin, ushmo Kish, ben Aviel, ben Sror, ben Bechorat, ben Afiach, ben Ish Yemini. So almost the exact same pasuk, as if to draw almost a continuum of the line and the lineage from Shaul straight to Kish, to Mordechai, and not just Mordechai, but Mordechai and Esther. And let's even prove it. We have names such as Aviel. What does that remind you a little of? Esther bat Avichail. And just in case you're not convinced, don't worry, because what's one of the traits of Ben Ish Yemini? Gibor Chayil. Esther bat Avichail. And you're saying, Shani, that's very cute. But really, it's not just cute, because these are redundant terminologies that are going to be incorporated in order to highlight the general illusion. And sure enough, how is Shaul HaMelech described? Well, firstly, Shaul is described as a ben. In other words, the story doesn't begin with an exposition of Shaul. Rather, Vahi Ish Ushmo Kish. And Kish takes care of his son Shaul. When Mordechai and Esther then write about their relationship, they are going to expose us to their characters in a similar manner. Mordechai, and he takes care of Esther. Esther and Shaul then are viewed really as the parallel dmuyot, as the parallel personae. And Shaul is a bachur vatov. Ve'ein ish mibnei Yisrael tov mimenu, mishechmo v'mala, gavoha mikol ha'am. How is he described? In short, tall, later on, tall, dark, and handsome. And therefore, Esther is basically saying, I have his genes. We're both selected as B'nai Rachel. We're both beautiful. And we're both taken care of by our respective Giborei Chayil within the family. But that's not the end of these illusions, because in fact, we see that even their appointments to the position of monarchy are going to be described in very similar terminology. Let's remember Shmuel Perek Yud. At that point, we hear that after Shaul was already anointed in the private sphere of Shmuel, there's then going to be a public coronation ceremony. And what happens? They go and they fetch Shaul. In other words, Shaul is quite reluctant. He really doesn't want this public position as monarch over the people of Israel. On one hand, Vayigba, what can you do? He's selected. He stands out. He is head and shoulders above everyone else. Vayomer Shmuel kol ha'am, hare'ita, asher bachar bo Hashem, ki ein kamo b'chol ha'am, vayoru kol ha'am, vayomru yechi hamelech. Shmuel is the one to highlight. Do you see? He's been selected. He stands out. He stands out even with his physical features. Sure enough, how does Esther become the monarch in the Persian kingdom? Well, she stands out. She stands out because of her beauty. Uvahagia Tor Esther, Bat Avichail, Dod Mordechai. That terminology once again. And very similar, we're going to see in this Shaul story, there's also his uncle is there. This time it's Bat Dodo, Asher Lakach Lo Levat, Lavo Al HaMelech Lo Biksha Davar. Just like Shaul, she's extremely reticent and reluctant. She really is not going to do anything active to be selected as queen. Ki im et asher yomar Hegai Sris HaMelech Shomer Hanashim. Just like Shaul, she is going to follow he who is in charge of her. Vatihi Esther noseit chen ve'enei kol roeha. But just like Shaul stands out because of his physical features, so too Esther. And just like Shaul is taken, or at least that's how it seems to be described, almost against his will. He never wanted to be king. He certainly is not going to place himself in this position. So too, Batila Kach Esther. Esther is taken to King Achashverosh against her will. El Beit Malchuto, B'chodesh Hasiri, Hu Chodesh Tevet. And let's even corroborate this further. As we remember the story of Shaul's anointment by Shmuel, do you remember why or how does he even make his way to Shmuel? Well, his father lost his donkeys. And his father asks of him to go and seek out his donkeys. And because Shaul is such an obedient son, that's what he does. Vayavor b'har Ephraim, vayavor be'aretz shalisha v'lo matza'u. And he is going to follow his father's orders till they are going to be completely fulfilled. Vayavor be'eretz yamini v'lo matza'u. And that's why he will continue. And just in case you're not convinced, Shmuel even says, I know that you made your way to me because you wanted to ask me, Shmuel the Ro'eh, Shmuel the seer, where your father's donkeys are. You never thought that you would be anointed as king. Surprise. But I know that that's really your concern. Your concern is not serving as king right now. Your concern is to find your father's donkeys. Not to worry, Shaul. I will make sure that you find your father's donkeys. And sure enough, by chapter 10, when you leave from this area, you will find two people by Kever Rachel and Amru Eilacha. They will tell you not to worry. The atonot have been found. V'inei natasha vicha et divrei hatonot. V'da'ag lachem lemor. Libni. And similarly, just like you're so worried about fulfilling your father's word, don't worry. Your father is worried about you. He's worried about your welfare. He's wondering, what happened to you? Mordechai and Esther write the story in an almost identical manner. How did Esther become queen? Not because she wanted to. Rather, who advised her to do this? Vayitzav ala Mordechai. All Esther does in the first few chapters of the story is in a very docile manner. She is obediently going to follow through with everything that Mordechai literally commands upon her. And therefore, and that's how she ends up in the position of Malchut. And on one hand, lo higida Esther et amavet moladeta ki Mordechai tziva alaha asher lo tagid. Even when she is in the position of monarchy, she still sees herself as obedient to her cousin Mordechai. Just like Shaul, even after he's anointed by Shmuel as king, he still sees himself as subservient and obedient to his father. In other words, the position is not going to arouse any sense of hubris whatsoever. V'chol yom v'yom. And just like Kish is worried about his son Shaul, so too Mordechai, don't worry, Esther is the obedient younger cousin, but Mordechai kol yom v'yom. Mordechai mitalech lefnei chatzer beit hanashim ladat et shlom Esther. Umay yaseba. What's going to happen to Esther? A very similar idea as well. And when Esther does become queen, she also is going to, as we'll see, make sure that Mordechai is going to be given a particular position. Vatasim Esther et Mordechai al Beit Haman. And interestingly, we see that she gives her cousin a particular position as a treasurer, as the head of Haman's household. So too, Shaul, when he is going to be in a significantly strong position as king, he also, what do you know, appoints his first cousin named Avner ben Ner, also to a significant position, namely to that of his Sar Tzava. And that's the relationship between them as well. Avner ben Ner dot Shaul. Esther comparing herself to Shaul in so many different ways. And at the same time, understanding that this is a little ironic because Avner then, the cousin who is appointed to watch over the king, take a look at Sefer Shmuel, chapter 26. And we know that even though he helps Shaul in wars, he doesn't really do a very good job protecting his cousin, because note that David, together with Bnei Tzruya, are so close to killing Shaul, even though Avner has positioned himself around Shaul to protect him. And maybe what they're trying to tell us is, don't worry, Mordechai does an even better job than Avner, meaning if you're worried about nepotism going on between cousins, and namely, look what happened. When Shaul appointed his cousin to be the general, he didn't really do a good job protecting the enemies of Shaul or David against Shaul. Don't worry, says Esther. My cousin Mordechai, he takes really good care. Not to worry. As a matter of fact, Mordechai, and for that matter, Esther, will also be there to fix some of the problems of Shaul and his entire family. But as we continue, we find other parallels. For example, even with regard to Ben Adam L'Chaviro, we know that as Shaul goes to seek out the seeker, Shmuel, he finds himself by a be'er, by a well of water. And everyone opening up Sefer Shmuel Aleph already knows by now, oh, the water, this is your typical type scene, as Robert Alter has clarified. And when we think of a well scene, what automatically comes to mind? Or maybe even to song? Odishama Bare Yehuda. Yes, by the well. Who always waits by the well? The young women are waiting by the well. And what happens? By whether it be the Eved Avraham and Rivka well scene, the Yaakov well scene, the Moshe well scene, what happens? They all find not only salvation, but a wife. Not in the case of Shaul. Shaul comes to the Be'er, and who else is there? A lot of Na'arot. There are a lot of potential young women there, tells us the Navi. As a matter of fact, they see themselves as potential young women. They're going to be somewhat flirtatious with Shaul. But somehow, Shaul is completely disinterested in all these women. He has no interest, really, in flirting, and for that matter, in taking advantage of his position by the well and asserting or even proposing to any one of them. Very reminiscent as well then when we open up Esther. Ovagia, Tor Esther, Bat Avichayil, Dod Mordechai, Lo Biksha Davar. Not only does she not ask for anything, she, like Shaul, is going to remain reticent. She doesn't speak much. Not to Hegai, not to Shashgaz, not even to her potential suitor who will basically save her life, namely Achashverosh. No. As quiet as could be. And speaking then about their reticence, this trait of Shaul, which we find also in Shmuel Aleph Perek Yud. Vayomer Shaul el Dodo. Again, the uncle back in the scene. Hagid higid lanu kinim sa'u hatonot. Shaul said, oh, I heard that my father's donkeys were found. Vetzvar melucha lo higid lo. That's what he's excited to tell his uncle. Oh, I heard the donkeys were found. That's exciting news. Wait a second. There's a little bit more exciting news, Shaul. How about You were anointed as king over the people of Israel. No, lo higid lo. No reason to say that. I don't have to divulge more than necessary. Lo higid, similar to the exact terminology, lo higita Esther et ama vet moladita. Achashverosh is going to try to elicit as much conversation from Esther throughout the story as possible. Lo higid Esther. She doesn't say anything. The exact term, ki ein Esther magedet moladita. Twice over, we find this terminology again and again. She, just like Shaul. And Chazal tell us it's not only just like Shaul. Yes, she's very similar to Shaul, but this is actually a trait of Rachel. If Leah Imenu is known to teach us the trait of Hodaya, the trait of gratitude, then Esther explains the Midrash in Breshit Rabbah, Rachel tafsa pelach shtika. Rachel teaches us the trait of silence. Vamdu kol baneha balei mastirin. And therefore all of her children are quite introverted. All of her children are going to be rather reticent. Whether it's Binyamin, who names one of his children even, whose stone is represented by Yashve. Yeshpe, he doesn't necessarily use it. He knows about the sale of Yosef, and he doesn't divulge it. Not to his father, and perhaps not even sharing this with his brothers. Shaul, Vetvar Hamlucha, lo higid lo, and the exact same term. Esther, ein Esther, magedet moladita, ve'et ama. And Chazal and Masechet Megillah teach us that this isn't just about reticence and their very quiet nature, but rather this is an expression of tzniut. B'schar tzniut shaita berachel, zachta v'yatza mimenu Shaul. Because Rachel was quiet and didn't tell not just her father, but even her own husband, that Leah was taking her place under the chuppah. For that, she has Shaul, who is quiet and isn't going to flaunt his stature in the people. And similarly, B'schut, or B'schar tzniut shehayabo b'Shaul, zacha v'yatzat mimenu Esther. Esther goes out of her way then to write the story and says, I have all the positive attributes of my ancestor, Shaul. I am responsible. I am good looking. I am obedient. I am reticent. I am tsanua. I understand that, yes, I deserve really to be in this position, to a certain degree, redeeming and simultaneously reminding us of all of the positive aspects of Shaul's monarchy. And speaking of the positive aspects, we also hear, ולאתונות עבדות לך היום 3 ימים, אל תשים את לבך להם, כי נמצאו. And Shmuel tells Shaul, again, not to worry about the atonot that were lost 3 days ago, because you have something even greater on your mind right now, namely the malchut. But even when Shaul has the malchut in mind, and even when he is publicly coronated in chapter 10, there are going to be some people who aren't very happy with his position. The Bnei Belial makim, and they don't offer him any tribute, any present. And Shaul overhears their mockery, and what's his response? Vayhi kemacharish. He is silent. He basically says, I'm not going to let this get to me. In addition then to 3 days of not worrying about the donkeys, Shmuel has to tell him, really, please, Shaul, can you please get these donkeys out of your mind? And please start thinking about malchut. Don't just think about your personal concerns. Think about national concerns. And at the same time, when it comes to monarchy, Shaul is rather silent. Esther says, don't worry. I'm different than Shaul, though. I also know how to be silent, and I also know how to be concerned for 3 days. But I am not going to be concerned with my personal concerns for 3 days. Rather, what does Esther ask for? Lech knos et kol hayudim. I am concerned. Initially,
I'm like Shaul. I was also concerned with my own welfare. I told Mordechai that there's really no point in appearing before the king because I haven't been called before the king for 30 days, and therefore chances are, if I come uninvited to the king, what's the king going to do? He'll simply kill me. I am a little concerned. And Mordechai says, really? Umi odeyam la'it kazot higat la malchut. Can you please remember what malchut is about? Shmuel tried to tell Shaul, malchut is about putting your personal concerns aside and thinking about national concerns. Esther says, you're right. Lech knos et kol hayudim. And I'm also going to wait 3 days. But I'm not going to think about my life. I'm going to fast together with all of the Jews. And I'm going to think about the survival of all of the Yehudim. Wait a second. Not even just all the Benjamites. I'm thinking of the survival of the Judeans, of everyone. I am not a parochial monarch. As a matter of fact, I'm not even disenfranchised from the majority of the population of Yehudim. Even though I'm from Binyamin, I take care of Yehudah. And even more than that, she claims, Lechnos et kol haYehudim, tzumu alai. Let them participate. And as Mordechai told her, Kiem hacharesh tacharishi be'et hazot. Mordechai himself is criticizing his own ancestor. It wasn't right what Shaul did. He was in a position of monarchy. What should he have done? When people mock him, you stand up for that position. You put people in their place. Em hacharesh tacharishi be'et hazot. Revach v'atzala yamor liyudim mimakom acher. Va'at uveit avich tovedu. Esther, this isn't just about you. As a matter of fact, it's not even just about you and your father. It's about you and your father and his father and his father and his father and his father, who was Shaul, and his father, who was Kish. And Shaul was willing to compromise on his family name, on the Malchut, on the national name. Don't do that. If you forfeit this opportunity to redeem Shaul HaMelech now, then you lost it forever. I don't know the next opportunity that someone from Shaul's line will be able to be in a position similar like Shaul. As a matter of fact, I don't know anyone who is as similar to Shaul as you are. Go show everyone that you could be a good Shaul. Go show everyone what it means to be a good Benjamite. Go and redeem Malchut. Ki em hacharesh tacharishi. Don't do what Shaul did. Umi odea im la'et kazot. He got lamachut. Who knows if for this very reason, you, isn't that strange? You, a Benjamite, the minority of the remaining population of Jews in Chutz La'aretz, not a Judean, a Benjamite was chosen to be the Persian queen, Esther. Don't you see what's going on? Your Shaul, take 2. Which is going to segue into the next part of our shir. If she's Shaul take 2, with all the positive qualities and potential like Shaul HaMelech, then what do you think is the next part? Then, here Esther, go and now return of the Jedi. You're going to be the one to show people how to do it right. You're going to fix also the mistakes of Shaul. Better yet, you're going to show the people, not just of Persia, you're going to show the people of Yehudah how to do it right. How to do it right. The people of Yehudah, they know Malchut, because who is the paradigm of a true king who then deserves dynasty? David. So you know what, Esther? You're so much like Shaul. Show people that you could also be like David HaMelech. So before we continue, on the next page you'll see a following table, again provided for by Professor Yitzchak Berger and also a friend, and he, I believe, is the first one to point out all of these parallels, a synopsis of the parallels so far, recognizing more or less, again, the subservience to the protective father, protective guardian, and all of Yisrael's eyes on you and Beit Avicha, warning Esther the same, but this time, be all the more careful. So let's see what this means. What does it mean? Be more careful. Well, we know that what happens to Shaul when he's first going to be anointed as king, we find on page 8, chapter 10, Vayavo sham hagivata, v'nei chevel neviim likrato, v'titzlach alav ruach Elokim vayitnave betocham. We know that Shaul's monarchy begins as divine monarchy that is approved of by Hashem, and therefore it's going to come hand in hand with Ruach, literally with the prophecy of God. However, as a closure to Shaul's monarchy, we find the same terminology. Vayikach Shmuel et keren Hashemen, vayimshach oto b'kerev achiv, vatitzlav Ruach Hashem, and so too, when he loses the monarchy, what happens? Shmuel anoints David with Ruach Hashem. Now that David has Ruach, what happens to Shaul's Ruach? V'Ruach Hashem Sarah mi'im Shaul uviatato Ruach Ra'ah mi'im Hashem. Instead of the Ruach with which he was first inspired by God, now that that's gone to David, what's left in its vacuum? A really bad ruach. And that's what's going to accompany Shaul through the remainder of the stories until his death. He has a ruach ra'ah, which means that when we open up Megillat Esther, with all the positive aspects of Shaul, we also have a little bit of a bad taste in our mouth, because what remains from Sefer Shmuel, from Shaul? Literally a ruach ra'ah. We have this bad ruach. As a matter of fact, in the story wherein we find that Shaul is going to have his monarchy taken away from him, why is his ruach taken away? Because of Shmuel Aleph Perek Yudalid. Because he is told to go and fight against Amalek, and does he do a good job? Partial. Vayas chayil, vayachet Amalek, vayatzel et Yisrael miyad shosehu. He does a partially good job, as we know. He strikes Amalek, but I don't put down all the ensuing psukim, because this is a very harsh rebuke that Shmuel is going to give him, because he keeps the king of Agag alive, and even if he means to ultimately kill the king of Agag, that pause allows for the people to have rachamim vayachmol al hatzon v'al habakar. The people don't fulfill God's edict. They don't kill everyone of Amalek, namely, not the flock, not the cattle. It's the story of Amalek that is responsible for that bad ruach of Shaul. I see that you know exactly where I'm going with this, because sure enough, who then is not only going to take the place of Shaul and have the proper ruach? We already saw David, but don't worry, it's not just going to be a divinely inspired ruach, but rather, while Shaul is going to be killed in Gilboa by the Plishtim for not wiping out Amalek properly, David, in the meantime, has gone down to the Negev, and what is he doing? He's going to wipe out the Amalekites. His ruach is going to be described as follows. Let's take a look at the story. David is discharged by Achish Melech Gat, by the Plishti king, and he comes back to his home base in Siklag, and there they found an Egyptian in the field. They brought him to David, but first they saw that when they came back to his area of Siklag, they saw that the Amalekites, these desert people that Shaul didn't really get rid of, had pillaged all of the area, and they had taken the wives of David, the wives of the people. They had taken clearly their flock and cattle as well. So David runs after them, and he has no idea in which direction did these desert people run. But they found an Egyptian. They gave him a piece of cake, of figs, and vatashav rucho. And then when his ruach returns, because he had fasted for 3 days, David takes care of him. And for 3 days, David says, I'm going to take care of you. Even though, and you're really the Egyptian over here, and I need you in order to wipe out Amalek. So I'm going to feed you after 3 days of fasting. And David says, who are you? He says, I'm actually an Egyptian who's a servant to Amalek, which means that I can get killed if I help you. And my master left me because, take a look at this terminology, ki chaliti hayom shlosha, because I am sick as of 3 days ago. Anachnu pashatnu negev hakreti. Yep, I was part of this Amalekite raid. We came upon the areas of Yehuda, the areas of Kalev and Siklag, sarafnu ba'esh. Yeah, David, we're the ones who basically destroyed your camp. Vayomer elav David, hatorideni al hagdud hazeh. Are you willing to sacrifice yourself after being sick, after fasting for 3 days? Are you willing? I'll help you. I'll take care of you. Are you willing to help me kill the Amalekites? Vayomer hishavali belokim timiteni, ve'im taskireni biad Adoni, v'oritcha el hagdud hazeh. The Mitzri Amalekite responds, as long as you promise that you won't kill me, again, you won't give me over to the Amalekites, I will help you. And sure enough, as a result, they found the Amalekite camp. And what happened? Pasuk Yud Zayin. Vayakem David mehaneshef ad ha'erev limacharatam, v'lo nimlat mehem ish, ki im 400 ish nara sherachvu al hagmalim vayanusu. David has an even more comprehensive striking. And here's the word. Vayatzel David et kol asher lakhu Amalek ve'et shtei nashav hitzil David. David provides for Hatzalah for Amalek. What does Esther write? Esther and Mordechai write the story of how she saves the people from an Amalekite named Haman Ha'agagi. She's going to save the people, not like Shaul, because Shaul did a bad job. And that's how he lost his ruach. Rather, she's going to save the people from the Amalekites the same way as David. Everyone ready? Let's see. Vatavona narot Esther v'sariseha, vayagidu la, vatitchalchal hamalka ma'od. Esther is also very sick. Who does she remind you of? Strangely, the Mitzri Amalekite, who's going to be the one responsible for helping David wipe out the Amalekites. She basically says, yes, I'm that secret spy infiltrator to Haman Ha'agagi. I'm going to be the one to get Haman. But don't worry, I'm not just the Amalekite. Who else am I? I'm also David. Excellent. So if I'm the Amalekite, what else do I have to do? I'm the Mitzri Amalekite who's going to help kill the Amalekites. So I have to go through the same process. I have to fast for 3 days. And not to worry, because vakasher avadati. And then what will happen? And then I will infiltrate into the Amalekite camp called Haman, through being provided for. In other words, then I will eat. That's why, what does she ask for? A mishteh. That's right. We're going to have a whole Suda. And that's how I'm going to provide. Who remembers the words? Revach ve'hatzalah. What does she restore? Ruach and Vayatzel David. Don't worry. I'm going to get the Ruach back. I'm going to finish what Shaul did not do, but what David did. And that's how he's the continuum of Shaul. But I'm the continuum of David. But thereby, I'm redeeming my ancestor, Shaul. And I'm going to save us like David. But Chazal teach us that that's why it had to come from someone from Binyamin. You'd expect someone from Yehuda, not only the stronger of the people, not only the majority during this time period. The Maharal points out that it had to be a descendant of Shaul. As he tells us in his very famous work on Megillat Esther or Chadash, Just look at the last few lines on the top of page 10. Hakarovu, the fourth line from the bottom. It has to be someone from Shaul who's going to finally finish off the job, because the original commandments of God came from God to Shaul, and therefore there's something in the Shaul blood that has to get rid of Amalek. But he didn't finish. Natan lo chayim, v'lefichach nafach alav Shaba Haman mizera Agag. That's why Haman is still alive, to get rid of Yisrael, and that's why Shaul's descendant Esther has to be the one to root out the core problem. But Esther says, I know how to do it. I'm not going to do it the Shaul way. I'm going to do it the David way. And I'll show you how else I'm going to do it. She says, I'm also going to do it differently. What did Shaul do wrong? If you remember, Shaul and his army took spoils from a war that they weren't supposed to take from Amalek. Esther says, don't worry. I'm going to do this right. Ubabiza lo shalchu et yadam. In case you weren't sure, again the next pasuk, and 3 more times over, Ubabiza lo shalchu et yadam. I killed out Amalek. I finished off what Shaul was supposed to do. But I did it the David way. And I didn't mess up like Shaul. With all of his positive attributes, I learned from him. No, even more than learning from Shaul, I learned from David. And maybe that's why we find that just as Esther's victory against Haman, against Amalek, is going to be manifest not only in wiping out Haman, but also his 10 sons, we know that David, when he wipes out Amalek, and when Shaul is killed for not wiping out Amalek, take a look at Shmuel Aleph, Perek Lamed Aleph. We find that the Navi goes out of his way to tell us that Shaul is killed by the Plishtim together with 3 of his sons. And later on, David, in order to compensate for Shaul's murder of the Givonim, is going to offer 7 of Shaul's sons. In short, 7 plus 3. Shaul has 10 children who are killed because he didn't wipe out Amalek. Esther says, I'm going to kill the 10 children of Amalek for finishing, basically, what Shaul didn't start. And this continues in other stories as well. Beyond all of these parallels, we find parallels with regard not only to the idea of all the positives, but as we said, the admonitions that are clearly going to be recognized throughout the stories, whether it be the term then of atal the separation from the Amalekites and the story of the Amalekite. Esther doesn't separate herself from the Jews. She sees herself as part. The Amalekites are threatened by Judeans. Judeans are threatened by Amalekites in the story of Esther. And sure enough, in the story of the Amalekite, he betrays the other Amalekites, whereas Esther doesn't betray her own. She is going to, together with the Jews, be able to finally fight and be triumphant against Amalek. But we find then that together then with David HaMelech, it's really Shaul and David combine that serve to inspire Esther to then finally save the Yehudim, not just the Binyamites, but save all the Yehudim. And this can be seen as well in the stories of the feasts of Shaul. If you remember, both of them have royal feasts. As a matter of fact, only in the case of Shaul and Esther do we find 2 royal feasts, one day after the next. And therefore, by Shaul, Yonatan wants to see, does Shaul really want to kill David? So he has one royal feast on Rosh Chodesh, Vayhi Macharat, and another one. And that's going to be the feast wherein, strangely, Yonatan is going to realize that his father is really angry with David and ultimately wants to kill David. So too, Esther says, I'm going to use the same Shaul feast because I'm Shaul's descendant. I'm also going to arrange for 2 parties in order to arouse the anger of the king, in order to convict the one who is really guilty, in order to have the enemy killed. But here's the difference. The enemy is not David. Who's the enemy? Amalek, Haman, who should have been Shaul's enemy. He should have been angry with Amalek and not with David. And therefore, Esther says, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to fix my ancestors' anger towards David by channeling it instead towards Amalek. And therefore, I'm going to have a 2-day feast as well. And that's exactly the terminology that we find in both cases. The royal feast of Esther, parallel to the royal feast of Shaul. Looking at the psukim before you, we see a jealous Shaul who seeks to murder David, a jealous Haman who seeks to murder Jews, a prince, Yonatan, who seeks to save David, a queen who seeks to save the Jews, an uneventful feast in both cases. Nothing really happens at the feast, but the consequential feast on the next day. The term in both Sefer Shmuel and in Megillat Esther, mimacharatz. Guess what? In both cases, they were successful. The king became enraged through Yonatan saying, yeah, David's not here today. And in the case of Esther, the king became enraged. The prince, Yonatan, got very upset that his father was angry and he left the feast. The king got angry and left the feast. Kalaki me'im aviv lahamit et David. Yonatan realizes, oh my father really wants to kill David. Kalata elav hara'a me'et hamelech. Haman realizes, oh the king really wants to kill me. The prince's further initiative, Yonatan then goes out to save David. And sure enough, Esther doesn't stop there. She is going to utilize the events of the feast to further save the Jews from the war that's supposed to take place in a defenseless state of the Yehudim. But this also is not the end of all these stories. As we then turn to page 13, we see that there really is an even greater illusion. Esther is saying, I am not just deserving of serving as monarch and thereby a tikkun for my ancestor Shaul. You know what else? I really am more like David. I can bring that ruach and hatzalah, that revach v'hatzalah mimakom acher. And you know what? I can do it like a Judean queen, not just like a Benjamite queen. Out of all the Judean queens who actually can save, who do we find does so? We find Abigail. So knowing that we're a little pressed for time, let's take a look at the next page, the associations of the Abigail narrative and the Esther narrative. Abigail, the wife of Naval HaCarmeli. We're not supposed to like him in the story. A very vile character who is really going to deny what David deserves as protecting him. Abigail is beautiful and clever. So is Esther. Both described as Yefot Toar v'Tovat Mareh. Abigail learns that, kalata hara'ah, David is going to seek vengeance against Naval for not properly paying him for all of his dues and sacrificing his life to protect Naval and his flock, that David is coming to kill Naval's household. That means who else is going to be killed? Abigail. Similarly, Esther realizes, wait a second, again, kalata. Esther knows that the Jewish people are going to be killed, but ultimately, she's going to bring this upon Haman. Abigail stops David from murdering her husband, and Esther will stop Haman from murdering her people. Abigail falls at David's feet, begging him to stop his rampage. Esther will fall at Ahasuerus's feet to do the same. We find that Naval dies when he's in a state of drink at his royal feast. And that's basically the salvation that's provided. Similarly, that's the salvation that will be provided for Esther as well. Both of them recommend waiting till the next day for salvation. Abigail induces mortal fear in her husband, and Esther induces mortal fear in the aggressor. Ultimately, in the case of Abigail, her husband dies at the hand of God. In the case of Haman, he dies, one can argue, at the hands of God, but really at the hands of the king. David affirms, wow, Abigail, you're right. Et ra'at naval hishib rosho. God, or basically you saved me from murdering Naval. You helped me save my bayit. You helped me save my malchut through Hashem ultimately killing Naval. Esther also, yashub machshvato hara'a arosho. Esther makes sure not just that her malchut survives, but that all the Jews. Wait a second. She's now telling us that she's not just the new and improved version of Shaul. She's not just going to wipe out Amalek the way that David did. She's even the new and improved version of David, because David was able to save himself and his malchut through the story. What did Esther do? Esther saved not her malchut and family, but the entire Jewish people. Which brings us now to the last stage, helping us appreciate the unselfish nature of Esther. Esther is also going to teach us how her malchut is really coming not just to fix Shaul, but to almost not fix David, but serve as the perfect parallel, continuum, and yes, even a little repair a little bit of what was missing in Malchut Beit David. Wait a second, you're supposed to gasp. Something missing in Malchut Yehuda? That can't be. See Divrei Hayamim. Yehuda is perfect. The Yehudim are the deserving ones to rule in Eretz Yisrael. Yehuda is pristine. Esther is going to point out that there's something missing in Malchut Yehuda. Yes, because she knows, just as we do, that when we open up Sefer Malachim Aleph, Perek Aleph, when we hear of Mered Adoniyahu, we hear at the end of David's life that his own son rebels in order to succeed him as king to the throne. And it's David who is going to have to take a position and tell his son Shlomo, you're the heir, and Shlomo, I have to tell you, there's one thing that I didn't do 100% right. And what is that? I didn't really take proper retribution against Yoav. I didn't really secure the kingdom so well by letting Shimi ben Gera from Binyamin stay alive. And I also, again, I didn't necessarily do anything to stop Yoav, but don't worry. I'm going to leave it to you to take care of all those who need to be taken care of. Because I have to tell you that I'm still leaving you some friends of mine, but also I have some enemies. Esther says, not me. I'm not going to leave the state of the Jewish people in abeyance. I'm not going to leave them in peril. When I kill out Amalek, when I secure the kingdom, let's take a look. Mordechai hayudi mishneh lamelech Achashverosh v'gadol haYehudim v'ratzui lerov echav doresh tov la'amo v'dover shalom l'chol zaro. What legacy of Malchut does Esther leave for the next generation? Mordechai and Esther leave a legacy of shalom. You don't have to worry. Everything is already secure. She basically is saying, Shlomo had to then start killing off members of his own family. Not here. I'm going to make sure that there's going to be shalom. And therefore I'm going to take the best of Malchut Shaul and the best of Malchut Yehuda. But I'd like to take this one step further. This isn't just about role reversal. It's not about Esther saying, I am more like David than I am Shaul. I am going to now bring back the glory of Binyamin through showing you that we could also be like Yehuda. And it's not just about retribution, but it's also about a reunion. She basically says, I'm not just going to make sure that the best of Shaul is combined with the best of Yehuda. I'm going to go back to the original conflict between Yehuda and Binyamin. A conflict between Yehuda and Binyamin? Yeah, there was a little bit of a conflict. If you remember, Yosef is going to become the viceroy of Egypt. And Yosef is going to give preferential treatment consistently to his full brother, Binyamin. And the brothers feel that. And therefore, even though Yosef provides for them in Egypt, even though Yosef promises them that he is not going to take any sense of revenge against them, we still find that there is a schism in the family. It's Yosef and Binyamin, and everyone else, primarily, as we'll see, Yehuda. And therefore, they are afraid of retribution. They're afraid, okay, even after Yaakov Avinu dies, they come to Yosef and they say, Dad said not to seek revenge against us. And Yosef says, why would I do that? I want a reunion. I don't want any tensions. But we know that there were. As a matter of fact, let's turn back to Breshit chapter 43. Again, if you remember, this is where and Yehuda has to convince Yaakov, please give me responsibility for Binyamin. And Yaakov, and Yehuda has to tell him, because, and otherwise we won't have any food. We're not going to survive. And Yaakov finally agrees, and he says, I hope that God gives you rachamim lifnei ha'ish, v'shilach lechem et achichem acher, ve'Binyamin, ve'ani, kasher shakolti. Remind you of anything? Well, not yet. But when you open up Megillat Esther, what does she say? Lech knos et kol haYehudim. It's not about Binyamin anymore. It's not about Yaakov showing preferential treatment to Binyamin. It's not about him being so scared over the life of Binyamin, because then Esther could have said, I want to show preferential treatment for Binyamin. Enough of this. Yehuda is so great. I'm going to save the Benjamites. And Yehuda, you take care of yourself. Esther says, Lech knos et kol haYehudim. I'm concerned for all the Yehudim. No more. We're putting an end to this Binyamin, Yehuda, Yosef, Sha'ar Achim tension. We're putting an end to the B'nai Leah, B'nai Rachel tension. As a matter of fact, we're putting an end to the Beit Shaul and Beit David divide. I'm going to make sure that it's just going to be one. And I know that really, as someone from Binyamin, I should really work on behalf of Binyamin. I should call this Malchut Binyamin, but I'm not going to. Lech knos et kol haYehudim. I see myself as part of the Jewish community, even in Judea. Go, and I'm going to protect all the Yehudim. V'kasher avaditi, I feel like we're supposed to hear, shakolti. If Binyamin dies, I die too. No, says Esther. If Yehudim die, then kasher avaditi. Then I also perish. And therefore, what we find is that it's not just a tension of Yosef ve'achav, but Esther says, we're finally going to reach a state of equilibrium. We're finally going to enter into a state of achdut. We're finally going to show the people of Yehuda that we stand with them, because we have an outstanding debt to Yehuda. Because if you remember, when the Gavia was found in Binyamin's sachet, it was Yehuda that in fact took responsibility and said, Ech e'ele elavi v'hanar inenu iti, pen ere bara, asher yimsa et avi. How can I go back to my father? Yehuda risks his life for Binyamin. Esther says, and now it's my turn, as someone from Binyamin, to risk my life for all of Yehuda. Ki echacha uchal v'ra'iti b'ra'a asher yimsa tami, ve'echacha uchal v'ra'iti ba'ovdan muladati. It is Esther that finally ends all the schisms of Breshit, that ends the schism between Malchut Shaul and Malchut Yehuda, that brings us to a state not only of V'dover Shalom l'chol zaro, not only of providing shalom for her generation, but truly reuniting us, finally reaching that equilibrium between Yehuda, who takes care of Binyamin, and Binyamin, who takes care of Yehuda. These are the words of Shalom and Emet that she leaves as a legacy for us as we reunite and rebuild the Jewish community, both in the diaspora and in the land of Israel. Shavua Tov.